Welcome to Building Something Admirable, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of how to start a healthcare-related business. I'll share each step that we took to establish our now thriving practice at Meyer Medical, including our highs and lows, insider advice, and real-life lessons in every episode. Good evening, future budding medical entrepreneurs. My name is Alex. Thank you for tuning in today. It is 9:45 p.m. and I want to record this one because we made a huge decision for the practice today, and I want to go into some details before I know what comes next, and this way we can kind of track the progress of this decision and see what happens. Let's get into it. Alrighty, so I believe we've talked about some of the issues before with I'm certain we talked about the issues before with the current reimbursement model for medical practices and the difficulties of relying exclusively on insurance reimbursement. Part of the problem is that with the changes annually in CMS reimbursement for services and etc., from my understanding, physicians seem to be getting our reimbursement skimmed each year, whereas others increase, probably not at the same rate as inflation, but at least try and keep up a little bit. Now, I'm not going to speculate as to the reason for this, nor have I had the time to really get into it, because maybe it is explained reasonably well somewhere, but unfortunately I've been a bit busy trying to keep this thing flowing, so instead I just take what it is and learn to adapt. Well, today we had it's kind of a typical day, and we found out more of the things we were doing aren't going to be reimbursed, in which case, so right now, I'm board certified or I'm board eligible, but about to be officially certified in physical medicine rehabilitation. To get there, I passed step 3 after completing an internship in internal medicine. My nurse practitioner is currently a family nurse practitioner certified, or I forget the terminology specifically. But because of the way that nurse practitioners get reimbursed, which is they get a little 15% taken off the top. That's a good point to know if you didn't know that one. We do a separate kind of billing called incident to billing, meaning that she essentially operates as part of under my license, and we discuss if she's ever seen any patients that I have followed up on, or sorry, I started initial consultation on, she's able to bill incident 2 because she's continuing the plan essentially that we've put together. While we are performing the plans together, I'm always in the buildings during these exams. If someone's scribing for you, you have to be there for the correct dot phrase to count towards compliance. Anyway, when it comes to incident to billing and doing something preventative that does not fall under the PM&R wheelhouse, i.e. pap smears, are not being reimbursed for these. So even though we are doing this predominantly as just a community service because of really poor access in the area for women's health, well, we're not getting reimbursed for this. And even if Angela were to become credentialed with the insurers independently, if we were going to continue this incident to billing, my biller notified me today that it's very unlikely that we would even then get reimbursed for these services. So, look back mentally at prior conversations about the really poor billing reimbursement for just general E&M and time-based coding, i.e. some may reimburse in the $50 range, $50 to $60 for 99232, which is inpatient follow-up, essentially, progress note. And on a time-based measure, so you're saying that for something that takes 45 minutes, the reimbursement rate is $50. And if you do the math, that means that paid abysmally for the work that we're doing. It's not much different in the outpatient setting. So you probably see where I'm going with this. We tossed around the idea of doing a hybrid concierge model previously when we were going to have primary care services, again, given Angela's experience and certification in my general comfort beyond the core PM&R things, as a lot of the obesity medicine continuing education that I've been doing, as well as just the stuff that I enjoy doing, focuses a lot on blood pressure management and diabetic management and some of the core primary care stuff. So because of this, we're debating having, primary care service, again, because access in the area is terrible, and it seemed like a way to provide that access. But we're absolutely not going to be doing this based on insurance reimbursement alone, for the reasons stated. Because in primary care, of course, there's even more paperwork than usual, and yet you get paid even less because you're doing likely less procedures, because you're seeing patients for about 10 minutes at a time if you at all want to get close to putting a roof over your head and paying for the overhead. So to make it reasonable, we said we were not going to be taking this on unless we were able to see the patients longer than insurance effectively allows based on economics. Well, we put a pin in that idea because it still looks like we were going to be under a lot of pressure to likely drive the membership fee down and rely more heavily on reimbursement as a proportion of our patient care. And it also was just going to be stepping further outside of our niche, and we wanted to keep things a little closer to what we were doing. Well, today we officially decided to do a hybrid model, but instead do it for our core niche and the periphery of that. So we're going to have a two-tiered model. We figured that tiered model makes sense. It's not all one, but too many tiers and it just gets complicated and frustrating. So we figured that we could service the patients as is and still make it a little more reasonable if we have a $99 a month membership fee, and that would, of course, afford more time with the patients. And the membership fee also is going to go towards any of the co-payments that patients would have for these visits. So it really kind of offset a little bit, and then allows them to have access to all the additional services that we offer. And eventually there's going to be some sort of counseling for exercise and all that stuff. The higher tier model is going to be, that's it's $25 a week billed monthly. So it's a smidge over $99 a month. And the reason to do that is weekly billing rates are just easier to wrap your head around and seem less daunting. But billed monthly, because if you bill frequently, you're going to end up paying more processing fees. Then for the high tier, it was going to be essentially, we started at a $250 monthly price point and divided that to the nearest, essentially, round-ish number. So $65 weekly, and we do the same thing, bill monthly. But what that one's going to include, that's going to be your I don't want to worry about any surprise bills tier. And so any necessary labs get rolled into that. Any medications that we fill in-house gets rolled into that, except for obviously semaglutide, and when we start carrying it, tirzepatide, with the plan of those being just heavily discounted. What this is doing, of course, besides the additional revenue stream, is just going to reel in a little bit the growth in the short term, but doing so where we're not losing additional money by doing this. So we essentially can throttle our growth to a reasonable rate, but then also still have revenue, but that revenue is going to be collected now and not 5 weeks from now. So we can bypass some of the other aspects of our lovely insurance system. I recommend doing something like this, honestly, because it makes it easier to predict your cash flows, and will let you, and you can do it with a straight face with your patients, because it lets you spend more time with them and lets you add additional services that you just can't do if you're going day to day, holding your breath, waiting for your reimbursement checks to come in, because, oh, again, it's 5 weeks later and we still haven't gotten paid for stuff we did, back in, what's this, we're in mid-May, so early April. And that's just not a way that any other business can function, frankly. And we need the predictability. Every business does. So it's a way of smoothing out some of those ups and downs and letting us be able to focus on just servicing our patients better. In the short term, we anticipate this is going to, of course, decrease our new signups. Totally fine with that. We're going to grandfather in any existing patients so we're not blindsiding any of them and forcing them to discontinue care, because that's evil. And if this does free up our schedules a little bit, I'll catch up on all the billing that, ironically, is sitting on my desk because I've been too inundated with the other stuff. But then also use that time to put out our content and enhance our other revenue streams from that aspect of things, and build up that stuff. And I was discussing with one of my orthopedic surgeon friends who is lamenting about the same problems in ortho, in particular with joint replacement surgeries being cut and cut and cut, and eventually it's just not going to be feasible to do them for reimbursement alone, with the amount of work that goes into this thing. So I'm not sure where this is going to go from a policy standpoint, but it is not sustainable. I'm very curious to see what happens next. However, knowing this ahead of time lets you build your practice with a little bit of foresight and hopefully avoid some of the whiplash that we've had to go through to make this feasible. The practice isn't at any sort of major risk right now or anything like that, but we want to make sure that we have the time and can enjoy our jobs more. Right now, the burnout that's affecting all of us is palpable, and I really enjoy the practice of medicine, and it takes the fun of that stuff, and I want to make sure that if you're able to take this insight from what we're going through and then be able to see now what it's like starting it and then what happens next, that you can do similar things to keep your business ahead of that curve, and you can just enjoy the fun that is practicing medicine and improving people's lives. Seriously. Thanks for listening, and I hope you gained something from this. Best of luck. Stay tuned for more insider advice on building something admirable. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe below.